It just might be the greatest sports franchise in the history of sports. A place where legends are made, and there's always something to talk about. Get ready to immerse yourself in pinstripes. Start spreading the news, hosted by Paul Semendinger and E.J. Fagan, a couple of doctors with a prescription for Yankee fever. And now, here's Dr. Paul Semendinger and Dr. E.J. Fagan. Get ready to start spreading the news.
And get ready to start spreading the news. Dr. Paul Semendinger here, Monday evening, June 22nd, 2026. And I'm almost live. I'm recording this about an hour and a half before this goes live. We will get back to live broadcasts soon with EJ. As many people know, I was working many long nights throughout all of this year, this calendar year, 2026. And it was great. It was great. But those long Monday nights impacted on my ability to make the time to be with EJ to record this show together. So this is the Start Spreading the News Baseball Yankees podcast. Let's make today a great day. You make your day great by doing nice things for other people and by appreciating all the goodness in the world around you. Cherish all the goodness in your heart, and remember that when you give love, it comes back to you in greater amounts than you ever gave. I just went back to my elementary school where I was the principal for 14 years, saw the graduating seniors who I hadn't seen many since they were in 5th grade. 7 years later, they all come back to the school. They ask the former principal to come back to the school, and it's just magnificent. Their parents are there, people who I made positive relationships with, kids I made positive relationships with. They always say, Dr. Sem, please come back. And when I get that email or that text or that phone call that says, Dr. Sem, please come back, it warms my heart. All these years later, they still want to see and take pictures with their former principal. Each one of those kids, each one of those families, an absolute delight. It's that community that proved to me the adage, when you give love, it comes back to you in greater amounts. I gave a lot of love, no doubt. I loved that school. I loved that community. I loved those kids. I loved their families. But when I gave that kindness and that love and that understanding, they gave it back to me in greater amounts. That's why I'm still dressed up. I needed to get home. I wanted to get this recorded. I had a couple other things to do. And I said, let me get this show on the road. So we have a brand new show for Monday night on June the 22nd. I will be with EJ one of these weeks. I said, let's look at July. Once July comes, my schedule, my calendar should open up dramatically, at least for a little while. But let's give us some content. The Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame, just announced their first class of, or the class of first-time eligibility guys. And of that class, I was going to do a show. I actually did it and recorded it, and I wasn't 100% happy with it, so I'm going to redo it and just focus on one area. But out of that whole first year, that freshman class, first-time eligible players for the Hall of Fame in 2027, there's really only one name that stands out. We're going to talk about another player too, but there's really only one name that stands out as a player that some people believe is Hall of Fame worthy. And that player is Buster Posey. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to look at Buster Posey, and I'd like to compare him to some other players who have more of a Yankee bend and see if Buster Posey is Hall of Fame worthy, then might some of these other players who played the position also be Hall of Fame worthy. Buster Posey was an MVP. Buster Posey was a Rookie of the Year. Buster Posey was on 3 World Championship teams. He won a Gold Glove. He was a 7-time All-Star. Those are all pretty good stats. Those are all pretty good things that help make a Hall of Fame case. Now, a little word about WAR. Wins above replacement. WAR is a valuable tool, but it's just a tool. It gives fans a glimpse as to whether or not a player is Hall of Fame worthy. Is it the be-all and end-all? No. Does it give us at least a ballpark with which to begin looking at a player? And it does. Now, 60 is traditionally the number that people look at when they want to get a rough sense of whether a player is Hall of Fame worthy or not. If you're over 60, you have a pretty strong Hall of Fame case. If you're under 60, your case is weaker, and you're going to have other things in your career that help boost up that number. Are there players who are over 60 WAR and who are not in the Hall of Fame? Indeed, there are. Are there players with under 60 WAR who are in the Hall of Fame? And once again, indeed, there are. But let's use WAR as at least a measuring tool. And we'll compare Buster Posey to some other players. And we're going to look at those other statistics too. But let's just start at WAR. Buster Posey earned 45 WAR. That's not really close to 60. Now, are there players in the Hall of Fame with under 45 WAR? Sure there are. And we're going to look at all those players. We're not going to look at all of them, but we're going to look at some of them. I'm just bringing up another piece of information here so that we have all the information we need possible as we get into this deep dive. I didn't bring up this chart, which I am realizing I should have. But 45 WAR, not bad. Here's a former Yankee, also a catcher, who had a very similar WAR total for his career, 42.7. 45 is more than 42.7. But 42.7 is pretty darn close. So let's compare. Buster Posey had an MVP. Did this player have an MVP? No. Buster Posey was an all-star 7 times. How many times was this player? 5. Buster Posey was on 3 world championship teams. This player was on 4. Buster Posey does have a Rookie of the Year award. This player does not. So when you're comparing the two, it seems that Buster Posey slightly is better than this other player. Let's look at some traditional counting stats. Buster Posey's lifetime batting average is over 300 at 302. This former Yankees lifetime batting average, 273. Buster Posey hit 158 homers. This guy hit 275. Buster Posey did not even drive in 800 runs. This guy drove in 1,065. As far as OPS plus, comparing Buster Posey's hitting against the rest of the league, Buster Posey's at 129. This player's at 121. So they're very close. Would you like to take a guess at who that contemporary was? A catcher from the same rough time period? That's Jorge Posada. If Buster Posey's a Hall of Famer, Jorge Posada at least has an argument for consideration. Does Buster Posey have a really strong Hall of Fame case? Not really. Does he have a very good Hall of Fame case? He has a very good Hall of Fame case. Might he get in the Hall of Fame? He might. But if he does, it opens up the discussion for Jorge Posada. So let's compare Buster Posey to another former Yankee catcher. Buster Posey had 45 WAR. This player, 46. Buster Posey won an MVP. This player won an MVP. Buster Posey was a Rookie of the Year. This player was a Rookie of the Year. Buster Posey was a 7-time All-Star. This player was a 7-time All-Star. Buster Posey won 2 Gold Gloves. This player won 3. Buster Posey won 3 World Series. This player won 2. So close. Let's go look at OPS plus. Buster Posey compared to the rest of the league. As we said, a 129 OPS plus for his career. This player, Buster, was better. If you take those numbers, 116. Buster Posey was a 300 hitter, 302. This player, 292. Overall OPS, Buster Posey, 831. This player, 756. So the WAR numbers say that this player was slightly better. Buster, and you looked at all those other numbers, Rookie of the Year, MVP, Gold Gloves, and all that, they're virtually identical. Buster Posey, you might give a hair's breadth edge to Thurman Munson. But it's that close. I think if Buster Posey gets in, then Thurman Munson has a heck of a case that he should also be in. Now, here's another player whose WAR doesn't compare to Posey or Thurman Munson. 27.1 compared to Posey, who's at 45. You'd say they don't even compare. How can you compare them? Buster Posey was an MVP. This catcher was also an MVP. Buster Posey was a 7-time All-Star. This player was an All-Star 12 times. Buster Posey won 1 Gold Glove. This player won 2 Gold Gloves. Buster Posey was on 3 World Series champions. This player was on 4. That player was Elston Howard. Elston Howard, often overlooked, but he was a heck of a ball player. Now, this is the chart that I was referring to, that I was pulling up in the beginning. If you look at the catchers by Jaws, lifetime WAR, if you type in Jaws in any position or bringing up a chart showing that position and all of the players there, and then you can sort by any number of categories, I'm going to sort them by WAR. The highest WAR for any catcher in baseball history is Johnny Bench, 75.1. Then there's Gary Carter, Ivan Rodriguez, Carlton Fisk, Mike Piazza, Yogi Berra, Bill Dickey, Joe Mauer, Gabby Hartnett, Ted Simmons, and Mickey Cochrane. Mickey Cochrane's lifetime WAR, 49.8. He's the 11th on that list. The 12th catcher on that list, who is not in the Hall of Fame, is Wally Shang, 48.3. Then Buck Ewing is in the Hall of Fame. And then 14 and 15, Gene Tenace and Thurman Munson. Now, some people over the years have said Gene Tenace is a more worthy Hall of Fame catcher than Thurman Munson. And what I'd like to do real briefly is just refute that as quickly as I can. I'm going to pull up Thurman and Gene Tenace's numbers. One statistic that closes this case whatsoever. Gene Tenace played in fewer than 900 games as a catcher. He played 625 games at first base. So his overall numbers are higher than Thurman Munson's. But Thurman Munson caught 1,278 games. Gene Tenace, 892. Thurman Munson, 1,278. Thurman Munson was a catcher, period. Gene Tenace was not. All right, so we keep going down that list, and then the next guy you get to is Buster Posey. He's ranked 16 all-time in WAR. 17th is Bill Freehan. 18th is Jorge Posada. These guys are all contemporaries. And if you put Posada in, that opens up the argument for Posey and Munson and Wally Shang. Again, I don't think Gene Tenace qualifies as a catcher because he didn't play that position enough. Just for the argument's sake, Buster Posey, should have looked at this beforehand. I'm starting to think of the question. Buster Posey, yeah, he played 1,093 games as catcher. So at least, and he got 1,000 games. Again, Gene Tenace didn't even make 900. But they're all very close. If Buster Posey gets in, I think Thurman Munson, because this is a Yankee show, and I think Jorge Posada, both have great cases. And I think Wally Shang, who is forgotten about, he was on 4 World Series. He had a lifetime batting average of 284. He was a champion, I believe, with the Philadelphia A's, the Boston Red Sox, and the New York Yankees. He had a 19-year career. He had 1,506 hits. Wasn't a big home run guy, but when you look at that list, as far as WAR, he's the 12th highest WAR catcher of all time. Unfairly forgotten. And if Buster Posey has a case for the Hall of Fame, then this player does as well. There's another guy on the list. Let me just bring my keyboard out here because we want to talk about one other player here. Sometimes when I rush on the keyboard, I type the wrong letters. Wouldn't be the first time I ever did that. And let me pull up the other player really fast as we go to the top of the page here. Because some people are saying that this player has a case. Be interesting. Another former Yankee, or a former Yankee on the list. We didn't talk about the other ones. I did on the show I'm not going to air, is Brett Gardner. Brett Gardner played 14 years and accumulated 44.3 WAR. Brett Gardner was a severely underrated player. He was better than most people realize. But his career, and I don't believe he's Hall of Fame worthy, his career mirrors, in some ways, a left fielder who played on the Yankees many years before, and one whom there's a great book written about named From Compton to the Bronx. If you haven't picked up that book, you ought to. Written by me with Roy White. It's Roy White's story that I wrote. Obviously, it's his book. Brett Gardner played 14 years, accumulated 44.3 WAR. Roy White played 15 years and accumulated 46.8 WAR. If you want to look at OPS plus, Brett Gardner's for his career 100, which signifies he was an absolutely average major league hitter. Roy White significantly above that at 121. Brett Gardner was an all-star once. Roy White was an all-star twice. Brett Gardner was on one World Series team. Roy White was on two. Roy White was a better player than Brett Gardner. And if people are going to spend time looking at Brett Gardner's career, which they should, he was a heck of a Yankee for a long time. And again, underrated overall. If you're going to look at Brett Gardner's career, though, you need to take some time and also look at the career of Roy White. So here's your trivia question for today. Among Roy White, Brett Gardner, and Don Mattingly, which of those three has the lowest career WAR? Roy White, Brett Gardner, or Don Mattingly? Now, if we were to ask 99.99, if we were to ask 100 baseball fans of these three players, who is the best, Don Mattingly, Roy White, or Brett Gardner? If we were to ask 100 fans that question, 99 probably would say Mattingly. And if we were to ask them to rank these three by WAR, I would think 99 or 100 would make Mattingly the highest of the three. But the interesting conclusion is that Don Mattingly, of those three, has the lowest lifetime WAR. Brett Gardner, as we say, was at 44.3. Don Mattingly, as I believe, let me see if I can pull up Mattingly's real quickly. Without wasting time, Mattingly, I believe, was 42.3. Let me pull my keyboard out. I was hoping to do this without having to do that, but I can't. So we'll do it this way. Donald Arthur Mattingly, one of my favorites, of course. Don Mattingly's lifetime WAR, 42.4. So I said 42.3. Not bad off the top of my head. Mattingly, Mattingly, 42.4. Gardner, 44.3. Roy White, 46.8. Interesting. There are a number of other former Yankees on the ballot, or who will be on the ballot, first-timers getting their chance for inclusion in the Hall of Fame. I don't think anybody believes any of those other former Yankees really have a Hall of Fame case. Will share their names: Starlin Castro, Todd Frazier. We mentioned Brett Gardner, Andrew Miller, and Jay Happ. Now, this is not to say that none of these players were good. They were all very good. They were longtime major leaguers. You need to be a major leaguer for at least 10 years to even get consideration for the ballot. I'd give my right arm to have had the career of any of them, but I wouldn't, because I throw righty, and then I wouldn't have been able to have any type of career. But the point is, this isn't to denigrate or to say that those players weren't good. They were all, at some point, all-stars. They all had impressive statistics. But when you're talking the Hall of Fame, you're talking immortals. And I don't think any of them really measure up. And if you're going to pick Buster Posey, I think that's going to open the door for other players who were just about at Buster's level and in some cases above Buster's level. So those are the players who everyone will be talking about as the off season commences over the winter and people start talking about first time people on the Hall of Fame ballot. Now, let me just remind everybody that this program is brought to you by Artemisia Publishing. Artemisia is an outstanding publisher located in the good old United States of America. They're a traditional publisher. The difference between a glamour press and a traditional publisher is that a traditional publisher does it the same way as the big publishing companies. They're an independent publisher, which means they're smaller, but a traditional publisher does not ask the authors for money. They publish the authors just like the big publishing houses. And when your books sell, you get royalties. The big publishers are able to put books in places like Barnes and Noble, the brick and mortar stores, and many traditional publishers or independent publishers can also do that. Artemisia does that. One of the great thrills of my life is when I go into a Barnes and Noble and I see one of my books on the shelf. But Artemisia publishes a wide range of books from a plethora of authors across a long variety of genres. Go to apbooks.net. And while you're there, don't forget to look up my name because they did publish numerous books that I wrote, including, as we mentioned, The Least Among Them. And as we mentioned there, From Compton to the Bronx, 365.2 Going the Distance, the greatest novel ever written in the history of novels, Scattering the Ashes, and the brand new The Greatest New York Yankees by Uniform Number. If you haven't read these books, you ought to. But you ought to see all of the great books that are at Artemisia Publishing. Go to apbooks.net. All right, my friends. Well, that brings us to the end of the show today. I encourage you also to go to the greatest Yankee site there is. Start spreading the news. Check it out. And then after the show, and after you check out, start spreading the news, or while you check it out, join the game threads. Get involved in the discussion. The Yankees are playing the Detroit Tigers tonight, and let's hope they're winning. Let's go, Yankees. Remember, give love, give kindness, be a good human being. Appreciate all of the good things that are around you. Thank you for watching. Have yourselves a wonderful, a fantastic, and an absolutely great in every way day. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.